Hi guys! Welcome to my review of episode 605 of Pretty Little Liars, She's No Angel. So first thing to note from that last episode, the Maddie Ziegler intro sequence. Oh my goodness. That was Pretty Little Liars at its seriously creepy best. Obviously we haven't ever really had any sort of dance sequences thrown in there before, but I think bringing her in for that moment was amazing. Spencer's brain is obviously focused very much on some very dark and upsetting thoughts at the moment, so it was going to take her to quite a dark place. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but my initial thought when I saw that dance/dream sequence was that it was in Radley, and then Spencer kind of woke up and was very focused on finding out if this was a room in the dollhouse, and none of the other girls seemed to remember it. And the whole time I'm sitting there going, it looks more like Radley. Of course, the further that we got into the episode, we discovered that it was indeed in Radley, but regardless of where it is or what time it was visited at, it was terrifying. I thought it was such a strong opening to the episode, so massive thumbs up for that. Then very quickly moving on to what we've discovered in the rest of the episode. In this episode, we see Spencer and Hannah going back to Radley to investigate and try to figure out whether or not Charles is actually dead, and more to the point, who he was friends with or close to in Radley. Towards the beginning of the episode, Mona returns, which I was quite excited about because I missed Mona from the past couple of episodes. Janelle Parrish is just such an amazing actress, so I was really excited to see her back. Mona is in a pretty fragile state, we think. You never know with Mona, you really don't, because throughout that entire episode I was really feeling for her because I was like, oh, she seems in such a terrible way. But towards the end you start to think, are you in as terrible a state as you want everyone to think you are? Mona's friend Leslie, who trashed the girls in court in the second last episode of season 5, reappears and does not seem too pleased to see Mona. She's furious with Mona because obviously Mona was pretending to be dead and Leslie went into a courtroom and effectively perjured herself. She takes out her frustrations both on Mona and on Hannah and is not very polite. Hannah later tracks her down to say that Mona is very vulnerable and very fragile and that she wishes that Leslie would give her a second chance. When Spencer and Hannah go back to Radley, however, and make their way through a whole bunch of files, during a couple of extremely creepy scenes, those scenes in that basement in Radley were so creepy. When the blow-up doll for the kind of first aid training appears in that bathtub, I nearly jumped out my skin. But anyway, they're going through a whole bunch of files, which leads to the discovery that Charles is definitely, absolutely 100% dead. And as they're leaving the building, they run into Mona, who they discover has stolen another file. When they get it and go through it, they discover that someone who spent a lot of time in Radley, long enough to know Charles, was none other than Leslie. Now, Mona claimed that she met Leslie in a completely different situation, completely different circumstances, but what we learned from this episode is that Leslie was actually in Radley and in Radley for a very long time. She could well have been close friends with Charles, and she was roommates with Bethany Young. So all of these pieces are coming together in terms of people who knew each other, who we didn't know knew each other, people who we didn't know were involved in Radley. I have to say, I was a little bit disappointed because I think I have set myself up for disappointment with this show because I'm just so desperate for it to be someone that we know really well. And when they start bringing in people like Leslie, who are sort of distant characters who've only been in it for short periods of time, I'm like, no, I want more of a shock, I want more of a surprise, I want it to be Arya. I don't want it to be Arya, but you know what I mean. I'm saying that because I had a dream last night that it was Arya. Pretty Little Liars is invading my dreams again, but yeah, I want it to be someone that we know really well. So at the end of the episode, we see Mona and Leslie on the phone to one another. Mona is apologising and saying that she's really sorry, but the girls have found out how they met, and Leslie is furious. She rants and raves at Mona down the phone and basically says, I asked you to do one thing and you've ruined it, you always ruin it. So we get the impression that she has been involved in the A-team for quite some time. However, we don't get the impression that she herself is actually A. Just after they've had that massive phone call argument, the camera cuts away and it's one of those very familiar ending scenes where we see the hands in the black leather gloves doing something A related. So in this instance, it was combing the hair of a tiny little wig that looked like Arya's hair. It was short, dark hair with the pink down the front, which is so creepy, but that's how the episode ended. Still thinking that A's a man or a guy. Roisin and I were talking about this last night, that the person who was in the dollhouse was definitely male. We're so sure that that person was male, and so members of the team around him could well be female, but I think that A himself, whoever it is who's channeling Charles de Laurentiis, I think is a guy. I don't know though, because last week I ranted and raved and said that it was going to be a girl because of the trailer. Speaking of the trailer, I'm now going to watch the 606 promo. I'm so excited for the next episode. So episode 606 is called No Stone Unturned, and I've got the promo here on my phone and I'm just going to watch it just now. What? 2 weeks? 2 weeks? No! I didn't know it wasn't going to be on next week. That's such a horrible disappointment. Oh well, I'm just going to have to try and get by next week without the next instalment. I wonder why it's not on. There must be something on ABC that means that they've shifted it for another week. Why did they do this? They did this with Once Upon a Time last season as well. There was a couple of occasions where there was a week that it wasn't on. So now A has chipped them. This promo didn't give us as much for me to get overexcited about as the last week's promo, because last week's promo had the whole she was in Radley for long enough to know Charles, which was very exciting. With that, it's just suggesting that A has chipped them. They're saying she, so they're obviously still thinking that A is a she. I was saying this to Roisin last night, I've now genuinely run out of ideas. I feel like up until last week I was still getting like loads of new ideas of like, well, this person could have done this and then she could have been involved here and whatever, and now I've just reached the point, I think with the whole Leslie thing last night, that just reached the point where I was like, I don't know what to think anymore. There seem to be a lot of people who have like got this right. I saw on Twitter that, you know, Marlene was saying, oh, so many people have, you know, figured it out and got not only the who but the why, and I'm like, what? I'm really now tempted to go all the way back to the first episode of season 1 and have a look and just basically write down a list of everyone who was in it and then be like, right, who could you possibly be? I really enjoyed last night's episode and I hope that you did too. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and you can, you know, share it on Twitter or whatever if you want to further engage in the conversation around Pretty Little Liars. It's such a good show, and I just feel like the minute that you get properly engaged with it, it becomes this sort of community experience because so many people are watching it and so many people are talking about it. So do let me know in the comments down below how you're feeling about season 6 and what you thought about the last episode. I hope that you're having a great week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye! It can't be Bethany because Bethany's dead, right? This is what all this is pointing to. This is all pointing to the fact that it's Bethany because they're saying she, a girl,